To log into FMS, which is in the cloud, you're going to go to vision.fmssolutions.com. You will be presented with the sign-on screen. You'll then enter your user and your password. So your user and password is attached to a security group, and that security group determines what menus that you see over here to the left. For example, if you were not authorized for account receivable, you would not see account receivable in your menu list. Here we have our work area. To the left, we have our menus. The top portion is reserved for the frequently used items. Those are the items that you use the most. There's 10 listed, and they are currently re-ranked every time you sign off and sign back in. So in the example here, you can see that Enter AP Transactions is the menu that's used most commonly. To access a program, you're going to go ahead and click on the subject matter, and then click on the triangle to expand that menu. And then in this case, we're going to go ahead and go into AP vendors. So your vendor list is displayed here. This is what we call the grid. Anytime you see a grid, you will then be able to use the icons over here to download that grid. So for example, if I click Excel here, it will take that information that's displayed on the grid and pull that down into Excel, as you can see illustrated here. The same for Adobe. If you wanted to just pull a report, you click on the Adobe icon and those things will be displayed. To find a vendor, you're going to use the sort code here. Type in the first few letters. It will search the list and find your vendor, pull it to the top. Once you're in there, you can then select that vendor and do some edit. So let's take a quick look at some vendor functionality. If I click Edit here, it's going to go ahead and pull up the details of that vendor. Once we're inside that vendor, you can see here's all the demographic information. There's the email address. You'll notice also you have an email and a telephone icon. So if you wanted to do a quick email to Debbie Smith at Frito-Lay, you could click on the icon there. And again, it will open up your whatever your default email provider is and punch in the Debbie Smith email address so you can shoot her off an email. Same for the telephone number. If you have a telephone number, you can click on the phone icon, and if you have Skype, it will then use Skype to dial that number and call it up. So here's all the demographic information. As we go down, we can see here's the DSD vendor number. This is how you link into your backdoor receiving system. So when you receive at the back door, those invoices can funnel their way all the way over into the accounts payable system and cut the checks. You can have multiple backdoor numbers pointing to the same FMS number. A couple different ways to pay. You can pay via check. You'll also see on the list here, if I remove the positioner, you can set a vendor up for ACH, and the system will create an ACH notcha file that you can send to your bank. The system will also email out that remit address, which we'll see in a second. You can have paid in cash in the event that you're doing beer or wine at the store. Paid in check obviously is very popular. And then EFT is where the vendor is actually going to come in and sweep the dollars out of your account. And then these are not very used often, so we won't go into that. You also can have vendor terms that are customized, so however you set it up. Net 5 is the example here, but if there was discounts involved or the first 15 days of the month, you pay by the end of the month, you can do that as well. Many different vendor types here. Central bill, DSD, and wholesaler all kind of revolve around accepting invoices in and being paid via some other method than check. Sub-vendor allows you to receive invoices into a vendor and have it pay through another vendor, commonly used for credit card type things. So you would still then be able to pull all the invoices in this case to Frito-Lay, but the system would know instead of paying Frito-Lay, we're paying Amex, but then also allow you to get all the information on Frito-Lay for invoices over a period of time, so you could still inquiry and look at them and do whatever you want on that side. Down here we see the 1099 information. So you enter that the code and the EIN, and the system will track all the purchases through that vendor. And at the end of the year, you'd be able to produce 1099s right out of the accounts payable system. A couple quick things here. We'll click on authorized accounts. So these authorized accounts ensure that you're coding the invoices correctly. So if the department account is not in this table, it will not let you code it to that. So for example, if you wanted to try to code Frito-Lay to utilities expense, you would not be able to do so since it's not on the list. And we'll see that in a little bit when we go in and key in an invoice. Let me go and exit out of there. It brings us back to the vendor itself. I do want to take a look at the ACH information. So this is Frito-Lay's banking information. So when we create the check run, it will automatically not cut a check for Frito-Lay. It will prepare a Nacha file to send the payment. Down here you can see here's where we're going to then send the remit advice to the email on file here. You can have multiple email addresses. You can also use this emailing feature without the ACH turned on, and it will still then email the vendor all the remit information. So in the event that you send them a check, if it gets separated, if the stub gets separated, they'll have a separate remit via email that they can apply the payments correctly. We're going to hit exit here, and then exit out of the vendor file. One more thing I want to show you, you can also attach vendors, images to vendors. So you decide what you want to track on your vendor. And then here you'll see there's the physical folders. And then you can determine if you want those folders to be required. And then if there's an image attached, you'll see the image indicator. And to view that image, we'll just check the box and click display image. And it will go out and grab that image and display that image up on the screen. These are all user definable. You can also query over the system to determine which ones are required and what you're maybe missing. So this would be, in this case, the vendor image. So exiting out of vendors. If I check the box here too, one more quick thing, if you have multiple stores, you can determine which stores are able to do business with that vendor. In the example we see here on the screen, you can see that store 2 here is not selected. So if I was keying invoices in for store 2, Frito-Lay would not be available to me. So I'm going to go ahead and hit exit, and we'll get the splash screen, and then you can close the tab down. Next, we're going to key in an AP invoice. So we're going to go ahead and get my image batch. So I've already clicked my batch, so it's already opened on my other screen. So I want to show you how you can fit all that on your screen. So I'm going to minimize my menu, and then I'll go ahead and size this up so I can display the batch next to my invoice there. So there's my invoice, and here's my entry screen. So I'm going to simply then key in the information from the scanned image. There's ABC Distributors. I'm going to select that from the list. I'm going to then come down here and key in the invoice number. And I'm using tab to advance from screen to screen. We can see there's the date, the total of $100. This is an invoice. If it was a credit, I would change that to a credit. Once I press enter here, it's going to tell me that that's a duplicate. So it's always keeping track of the invoices that have been keyed in. And you can see this is a sample invoice. So this is the exact invoice that's already been keyed in. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and just alter that number to get it so we can go ahead and get that in and see what that looks like. Oops, no. So in this case, you can see ABC vendor is tied into a specific GL account. So there we see our grocery purchases on the screen. There's my $100. So once I press enter here, it's going to take this invoice over here to the right, and it's going to attach it to this transaction inside FMS. So whenever you go in FMS, you will always then be able to call that transaction up. And what happens on the other side, you can see it then displays the next invoice in the batch, and you go so on and so on. And once the batch is complete, you will get to a blank screen, and then you can actually go ahead and exit out of the AP entry screen. Okay, we're going to do a couple more things here in the accounts payable system. So next we're going to do some research. So suppose I get a call from a vendor and I need to look that up. One thing I also wanted to point out is you can also keep the tabs open. So if you're working in programs, you can keep those open and hop easily between programs without logging on again or closing your session or losing your place. So I'm going to come down here into AP transactions, and this time we're going to go into AP transactions by vendor. And this is where we're going to go to do our our research. So if I was going to go look at ABC distributors, I can then come over here and do maintain AP transactions. So it's going to take me in and show me all the transactions. Here you can see these are open transactions, so these are unpaid. If I hit toggle, you can see it will then bring me over to my paid transactions. So if I was looking up a transaction, this transaction is paid, for example, I can then check the box here and I can do a display. And it's going to take me into the detail of that invoice. So here on this screen, you can see that this invoice was paid. Over here to the right, it tells you the check number, when it was physically paid. It also will tell you when it cleared and the date it cleared the bank. You also have that same email functionality. So if I had this vendor on the phone and they were asking about this invoice, I could quickly click this email button and then email them a copy for their records. If I go ahead and go back here, you'll also notice that here's this, again, we have invoices in what we call the grid. So if I wanted a quick list of the paid invoices, or maybe that's too big of a list, if I wanted to toggle over to back open to my open invoices, and if I wanted a quick list there, I could hit the Excel icon and you can see it will then open up a quick Excel of all the invoices that are in that list. What else you can do here as well, as you go through, you can see here this invoice has an image. So again, if I wanted to display the image, I could click on the button there and do view image, and that image will be displayed on the screen. Generally speaking, when you go in the first couple times that you get the image, it's going to our servers and pulling those invoices up. So there's that, and once you get it here, again, you can print it or do whatever you want with it, email it directly from the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it back here, and then I'm going to keep this screen open just to show you as I go through. One more thing I want to take you up here in the master files. As you make change to vendors, the system keeps track. You have an audit history. So it keeps track as you make changes to the vendor. So you can see here's our vendor we've been working with, this ABC Distributing. It keeps track for the last 30 days. If you change the date here, you can go back further to see. So if I check the box here and do details, it will tell me what that change was. So you can see that the authorized accounts were changed. The old, there was nothing, and then there was a new value there. It tells you with the user that did it, and then the date and time that they actually did it. And again, you can print reports on here, so it keeps a track, a nice audit trail of all the changes to your AP vendor. Moving over to the general ledger, I'm going to show you how to do some project tracking information here. So if I come down here on the configuration menu, select project tracking, and you'll see there's some projects that are assigned. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and do an edit. So you set the project up, you pick a start date and an end date, and then you pick the status. So when you're creating it, you would click it as being opened. And then once the project is opened, you key transactions in and assign them to that project, and the system will keep track of it. So if I was to go ahead and take a look at this ABC Back to School promotion, I'll click on the project details here, and you'll see that we have all different kind of types of transactions. We have some accounts payable here. We also have accounts receivable, keeps track of the dollars. So here's money's collected, and here's how that money was physically spent. Again, using the print, you can print a report. Let's go ahead and do that. So to print the report, or you can just quickly drop it down into Excel or open it in Adobe. Once you do some printing, let me show you that. So anything that's printed doesn't go directly to a printer. It goes to what's called your spool file. To access that spool file, you're going to go ahead and click on the printer icon, and you'll see it opens up a little tab that says spool file. Once you have that information here, you can then come in and pull that information down. Let me go back and reprint that. Oops. So now that it's done, I'm going to come back into spool files and do a reload. There's that project, so I can go ahead and click on it. You have a couple choices here. You can open things in Excel. You can also open them in Adobe Landscaped, or you can open them in text file, or you can open them in a Adobe Portrait as well. So if I was to go ahead and click on that, you'll see the report come up on the screen. So there's all the detail, what the GL headers for that given report. If you also wanted to take something and open it into Excel, for example, so again, it's making some decisions based on your columns. So then you have to do some work as far as fixing your widths, but you can see it drops all your numbers into the columns, and it leaves the headers over there for you as well. And then you can manipulate it into Excel. A lot of times when you're working, you keep your spool tab open, so when you run new reports, you just come in here and do reload. It will refresh the screen. Your most current reports will always be up at the top of the screen. Let's take a look at a few general ledger items. So let's key in a journal entry to show you a few things there. So I'm going to go ahead and open the journal entry tab. You can see I've done that in advance. I'm going to go ahead and key in my corporation, my store, and then we'll key in a date. You have multiple reversing flags here. So in this case, we're going to do not reversal, but you can see all the choices there. Once I press enter, it's going to bring me over to my distribution. So let's just say that this was an entry where I wanted to go back and accrue something, but I wanted to find a value or an average over a period of time. So in this case, I'll go ahead and key in the corporation, the store, and then the account I'm trying to accrue, and I'll go ahead and press enter. And it's going to come up and ask me, do I want to use the historical accrual? And I'm going to say yes. And then it's saying, okay, well, what period am I want to use? Well, I want to accrue just a period's worth. And then it's going to say, okay, well, what data range do you want to go back to determine the amount to accrue? So in this case, I'll go ahead and pick 0101. I'll pick an old date here so I make sure I get some data. So I'll pick a whole year's worth of information here. So it's going to go back, and you can see what it's doing now. It's going to adjust the dates that I keyed in to match my GL calendar. So you can see it changed those dates. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So what it's doing is it's going back into this year, and I want a period's worth. So it's going to give me the average over that 12 months. And you can see here it's returned the value of $410.89. So that's the amount of my accrual. So then I would just come down here and balance the entry and accrue that amount. So you can do that with any account. You set that up at the account level. You say you want that to be an accrual account. You can also set up memorized entries with multiple accrual accounts, so you can do your month-end accruals or whatever you need to do at that period of time. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Let me show you another thing with the journal entries here while I'm here. So also what you can do with journal entries is when you're going into the grid page, you can take anything in Excel. So for example, I have this all mapped out here in Excel in advance, so I could just do a quick copy, and then I can come over here and just drop that right inside the grid. Press enter. Again, it's going to make sure that all my accounts are valid, so it's checking against the store chart of accounts. Make sure the accounts are valid. Checking all the amounts, and then I balance to zero so that I can physically come over and post that journal entry. So a couple quick things there with general journal entries. So we saw the historical accrual type. Let's show you another type. What we want to do is, let's just say we receive a prepaid bill, or a bill that covered multiple periods of time, and we want to key that in. So in this case, we'll say it's a personal property tax bill. So I'll go find the vendor. I'll select the vendor, and again, key in the information here. So there's my amount, and there's my prepaid taxes. So I'm going to, or personal property tax. So I got to press enter. So again, It's telling me that I can allocate this, so I want to go ahead and say yes. And I'm going to say that this bill covered the calendar year 2020. And that I want it to post over each period. So when I press enter here, it's going to go ahead and do that. And once I'll go ahead and complete this entry. So now that's accepted. So let's go over here and take a look at it. So there it is, my entry. I'm going to go ahead now and post it and watch what happens as I post this transaction. So let me toggle over to posted. So you can see it's taken my invoice, and then you can see here it's flagged as allocation, and it broke that invoice down and recorded it over 13 periods, which is my year. So if I was to, and then of course the dates are going to match my GL calendars. So if I was to then take a look at that transaction, you can see that's the 1/13th share of the value that I've physically keyed in. It also breaks it down by days as well. So if you had a utility bill that spanned a couple periods, you can then key in the dates of that utility bill, and it will break that down using the days of the month and apply the correct amount of days to each of your periods. Let's take a look at the account balance inquiry. So here's my inquiry screen. I'll go ahead and say I'm looking at Corporation 1. Let's just pick the year so far, 2020. Again, you can exclude stores. Different ways to slice and dice the information. We're going to go in by account. You can also customize the amount of rows that you see on your screen. So let's just say I had 10 stores, so I want to see 10 rows on each page. Let's go in and we'll take a look at grocery purchases for store 10. So there's my beginning, net, and ending balance. Again, as we saw before, you can drop that in Excel for a quick trial balance, or Adobe for a quick report. Once I check the box here, I can then do view transactions. So it's going to take me into that GL detail here, and you can see that down the bottom. You can see down here we also have the images. So again, if I wanted to physically look at it at one of the images, I could go ahead and check the box here and do view image. It's going to drill down and find that image on their server and pull that back up on our screen. And so there's our supposedly our free-to-lay invoice. So I can go ahead and close that. Once I do that, I can go ahead and go back. And again, I could then look up another account if I was looking for it.